5, 6, 7, 8.
Colgate. Great grandmother Colgate.
Yeah.
Oh,
You gotta have a fight about it.
yeah.
So he doesn't know.
I love that for them. All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Gilmore to Say with Tara and Haley. I'm Tara. This is Haley. Hi, Haley.
Hi, Tara.
We're back for part 2 of our Sookie and Jackson episode, just keeping the anniversary celebration going on the train. All aboard. Choo choo.
Keep those good vibes going.
Yeah, let's keep the good vibes going.
Are we keeping the good vibes going?
I don't know. I think the good vibes are about to go away.
Bye, vibes.
Bye, good vibes.
It was good seeing ya.
No, they stick around for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
About halfway through this episode, we're going to lose them a little bit, which is fine.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right into it. We left our last episode on the, kind of the finale of Sookie and Jackson's newlywed phase, because we're about to go into the new parents phase in season 4. And I feel like we still have Sookie and Jackson.
Tara would not let me start off this episode with the word being jukey.
I thought that we could do better.
Well, I wanted something that encapsulated the second phase, because the last episode was all about the first phase, if you will. And I felt like jukey.
It is really representative of phase 2.
Yes.
All right. Sure.
It's just so jukey, right?
Oh my God, I hate it. I hate it. I just hate it so much.
That doesn't mean something else. I've never heard that before.
I've never heard it before either, and I really hope it doesn't mean anything else, but I digress. I feel like we came to kind of this end of Sookie and Jackson in their newlywed phase, and we're about to move into their new parent phase because Sookie is pregnant. When we see her at the beginning of season 4, she is like so excited to see the Gilmore Girlies back from their backpacking and Europe trip, and she's pregnant and she looks beautiful, and she has her own little like kind of like mom cave that she can go into because Jackson doesn't want to know the sex of their baby. He wears that button that says, "I do not want to know the sex of my baby."
Yeah. My favorite part of that episode though is when Rory's wearing it at the Kims.
Is that a cut scene?
I think it's a cut scene.
It is a cut scene. Yeah. I do love that though, that Mrs. Kim is like looking at her and looking at her button. Being like, do not want to know the sex of my baby. Okay. But this entire season for Sookie and Jackson is about them becoming parents. It's when the like Beau Belleville character is introduced, and we kind of get Jackson's brother and some insight there. It's when the Bruce storyline is introduced as her being the midwife. She's a midwife, right? We established this when we were talking about the doula.
She's a midwife.
Sookie and Lorelai are building the inn. So that's where a lot of Sookie's storyline is being catered to, is her being a new mom and not really being able to show up for Lorelai in the ways that she once was able to before she was a mom, which is very understandable. But that's kind of what we're about to get in season 4. And I like them in season 4. This is also when we get Jackson sleeping with the zucchini, which is really cute.
Because they all needed a good night's rest. And for some reason, it was just this like magical moment of them all sleeping with the zucchini. And it really was Jackson's dedication to the inn. Yeah. That he wanted everything to turn out well for them.
Yeah. Yeah. This is also when we get, I believe, that moment between Jackson and Gypsy.
Yeah, when they look for the eggs.
That's another moment where Jackson is kind of removed from his relationship with Sookie to be more of a townsperson than he is a husband or a father or a friend or a produce supplier. And I enjoy that.
I wanted more of it.
Yeah, I agree. I remember you really liking the
I loved
Gypsy
them.
Jackson dynamic. I was like, where's this? Bring us more of this. But I think that we're so focused on the Gilmore Girls and the transitional period of their lives, and the fact that we're splitting a lot of our time now with Yale in a way that we never did before, that I do feel like we lose a little bit of Sookie and Jackson as characters, just like their presence in season 4.
Yeah. And I feel like that's pretty true of the show in general, of like they do have to sacrifice a lot because it used to be going to school. And then I was about to say Tara. Rory coming home and being a part of Stars Hollow, and like those storylines could like simmer a lot more.
Yeah.
But she goes to Yale, and so not only is she at school, well, for part of it she's at school, but she does come back and forth a lot. But as she spends more and more time in New Haven at Yale, we're having to like draw back on some of the smaller characters' storylines, which is actually why I think Jackson does end up in the square with Gypsy, because it feels like, okay, let's throw Jackson in there. He doesn't have a storyline right now, but we want him to be a part of the town.
Yeah. I mean, his storyline is being a dad, but once Sookie has the baby, I do feel like a lot of it, like I said, is catered towards the ways that she can't necessarily show up for Lorelai, rather than their relationship as parents and like being new parents. So I totally agree with that he's just kind of thrown in, and it's like, all right, hey Jackson, how you doing?
Yeah, because he doesn't serve much purpose, because like it really, like you said, is focusing in on Sookie's new circumstances as a mom, and also the circumstances of them developing the inn and the conflict there, that to throw Jackson into that storyline, it feels like almost takes away a little bit, because it's like, oh, Jackson takes part of that load off of her. But if we threw Jackson in and did that, it would kind of mess with the conflict just a little bit. So let's throw him in the town square with Gypsy.
But you know what's interesting is that I feel like as we move into season 5, the two of them show up a lot more, because now the inn is established again because they're at the Dragonfly, and
we get
now
some
they
more
have
of that.
Davy.
Like Jackson comes into the kitchen.
Yes, exactly.
That's reestablished.
But it's also established that Jackson is running for town selectman and then ultimately gets elected, and I think that storyline coming in then gives him a lot of purpose to come into the inn. He's on the phone. He needs to change his shirt.
Yeah.
You know, he's not so much there as the vegetable guy anymore. He is there as Sookie's husband, and he is there as the new town selectman. And that's kind of the purpose that he serves. And we do get a lot of like dad moments with him, with Davy, him bringing Davy to the inn in the first episode in season 5, where he's showing him around. And I love when Bebek goes, "The baby's here." It's like, you know, it's so funny. Yeah. And we get that, and we get him like showing him off, you know, when he's running for town selectman. So we get a lot of that action.
Yeah, like Sookie shoving the baby on him. I will say that's one of my favorite parts of their relationship, is when he is running, is because Sookie becomes like the politician's wife. She's wearing the like tweed pink Chanel-esque, the Jackie Kennedy-esque outfit. Yeah, it's like so cute. But the best part of that is when Jackson gets up on stage and was like, "I don't want to do this."
Yes,
and they're like, "An honest man." I love that for them, because it's like, it is this storyline that's not about them being parents, but their like parenthood and like their Davy, I was going to say their child, I can call him by his name, Davy, is incorporated into it. So it's like this like very layered storyline that's mostly centered around them, and the Gilmore Girls are kind of like just like floating around this storyline of theirs in this episode. And I really, really love that. That's like something like it pops back up and you're like, oh, here's this like outlandish circumstances for these characters that are normally just kind of, you know, have vegetables and cooking the vegetables. So I kind of like this little like pop up of wild from them.
Yeah, definitely. And it's fascinating because you and I didn't like the episode Tippecanoe.
We didn't like that episode.
We didn't really like that episode. And then we ended up really liking We Got Us a Pippi Virgin. That was the plot twist of season 5.
We don't know what was going on there. But I did like all of the storyline about Sookie and Jackson in that episode.
Yeah, of course. As did I. It's more the Dean parts that we didn't totally love.
It was the Dean. It's always the Dean part.
So real, so real. But yeah, it's fun when they throw this wrench into it. What I really wish that they had done more of is like they lean into him being town selectman. In like I was saying, you know, him coming into the Dragonfly Inn, he's on a phone call. Lorelai wants him to sign this thing, and he's like, "Oh, this is for new parking spaces. You don't respect my job." Like, you know, it's that kind of back and forth. And then like when he needs to hide from people to go get, you know, when Sookie realizes that she's pregnant in Norma Mailer.
I'm pregnant.
And he needs to get her some stuff, but he's hiding from people because he knows he's going to get bombarded. He asks Lorelai for help, you know. There's some of that, and he gets the giant scissors left on his on the front porch. The threat. that is funny, but then it falls off. We never really hear anything about it again.
Yeah. Like when they kidnap him.
They kidnap him, bring him into the town meeting, and then we never hear about Jackson being town selectman again. And all of a sudden, Taylor is back to being town selectman. And maybe in that meeting, it was decided.
They used the giant scissors.
Yeah. But we never really get any resolution
never
there.
Found out.
Yeah. But there's
still... feel like it was the middle of the night, like handover.
Yeah, he just said, I wish that we'd seen it though. Them in trench coats showing up in the alley where they eventually build the secret bar and they say, hey, I'm done.
100%.
Taylor said, I knew this day would come.
Exactly. The other thing I want to point out from season 5 that's interesting for Jackson Douglas, because of course, Jackson Belleville, played by Jackson Douglas, is he starts directing. This is the, what is it? To Live and Let Diorama.
Yes.
He plays the director. He
does
director.
play
he
the director.
It.
It's true.
And so I think that's also an interesting dynamic that is thrown into the show, that as he starts directing, how he plays into it, because that is not, I don't think he's in that episode.
You're right. And it's interesting because I actually would have pictured him being involved in the
Twickham house. Because that's what old man Twickham dies. And this is the
Gypsy's there, his best friend.
That's what we were talking about. Gypsy, his best friend, is there. Why is he not there?
Yeah,
and
totally.
They're making the Stars Hollow Museum, and with all of the dioramas, with the title, makes sense. And it just seems like he'd be there, but he's not. He's behind the camera.
He is, which is really cool. And he does go on to direct more episodes as the series goes on.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because we are now, what's introduced to us in season 5 is pulled from what was introduced to us in season 3, in that Jackson wants 4 and 4. And we never get the resolution from Sookie. We get some sort of resolution to their conflict when she tells Lorelai in the dance marathon episode, like, hey, yeah, we're going to talk about it and everything will be fine. But we never find out where they land. Are they going to have 4 kids in 4 years? I don't know.
It's a mystery.
They do get pregnant.
Suspenseful.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden this is a mystery. I don't know what's going on. But they do end up getting pregnant within their first year of being married. And of course they have Davy in season 4, and she gets pregnant pretty soon after in season 5. And I don't think it ever once crossed my mind, like, oh, they're going to have 4 kids in 4 years. But Jackson keeps bringing
up. It's verging on that. Yeah.
It kind of looks like it might go in that direction. But in the hospital, when Sookie is having her second child, Jackson keeps saying, well, whatever we don't use on this, like whatever name we don't use, we'll just use for the next one. You can tell that that's making her really uncomfortable. And so her solution to this is to tell him that he's getting a vasectomy.
And it's been scheduled. And it's right now.
Oh, they brought the big nurse.
Yeah. And like, it's silly.
Once again, it's silly. I know what they were trying to do, but I think it like disrupts, it like causes a lot of turmoil within the fandom because of what it brings in season 7.
Well, season 7 aside, how do you feel about it?
I think it's unfair. And I remember Brett watching it and going, oh no. What? No. He really didn't.
A surprise vasectomy?
He was like,
him?
It didn't intrigue him. Shockingly, he wasn't a big fan.
He wasn't into it. Yeah. I don't know anyone who would be.
I don't know anybody who would be.
Surprise surgery for anyone just doesn't feel right.
No.
But I think that was one of those things where like it towed the line just a little bit in the silliness of it, because you're like, oh, okay. Now your miscommunication or your lack of communication is leading to surprise surgeries. And
yeah, I think I understand what they were trying to do in the comedy of it. I think that they could have, like, if we wanted it to be a little bit more acceptable for especially this couple, I feel like Sookie would have sat him down and been like, I want you to get a vasectomy. And have him be like, why? She's like, because I don't want to have any more kids. And
we won't be having any more
won't be having any more kids. I don't want to get pregnant again.
Yeah.
So it is something that is reversible if we ever change our minds. But for now, I don't feel like I'm going to change my mind. And therefore, I would like for you to get a vasectomy. But that's not what happened. It was, you're getting a vasectomy, which at the time probably felt very funny. I think in hindsight, we're all just kind of like, hey, that's kind of violating.
It is very violating. And I think if I'm like in the same way that like before, I'm like, oh, that's a little bit toxic. When you look at it, like if your friend was like, oh yeah, I scheduled my husband's vasectomy without him knowing immediately after I gave birth, you're like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I didn't realize you were a little bit of the villain. But like looking at it in the show, I'm like, okay, haha. He could have said no. He didn't have to go do it.
And he didn't.
And canonically, if we're looking at the show itself and not from the brain that originally created it, canonically, he didn't go get it. Mm-hmm. But he didn't tell anyone. Which, is that fair? She didn't tell him it was going to happen. He didn't tell her that it didn't happen.
It makes it very tricky. And I don't agree that he shouldn't have to. We talked about this extensively in last year's episode.
Yeah. We also talked about it extensively in a recent Patreon episode.
Yeah. I don't agree with the fact that he didn't tell her. He should have told her. And Lorelai says this to him. She's like, okay, that's fine that you didn't want to get the vasectomy. Understandable. You should have told her that you didn't get it. I more so
disagree that he didn't tell her than I disagree with the fact that she surprised him with it.
I think it's equal for me.
Really? I just don't like the fact that he didn't tell her that he had gotten a vasectomy, which like the consequences of it is that like at any point in time she could have gotten pregnant.
Correct.
Without wanting to.
Correct.
And he could have just said no.
Correct.
To the surprise vasectomy.
No, you're so right. I just mean to say that like I think both are wrong.
Oh yeah, they're both wrong.
Yeah.
And I think one of them can be silly, if I'm being honest. Like the one of like, hey, you got an appointment. And like, because like it's very easy to like, you know, de-escalate that situation. The other one, not silly in the slightest.
The other one, she didn't have an option to say no because she didn't know the full circumstances.
She didn't know.
And that is where it gets really icky. But again, we talked about that extensively last year. I don't want to harp too much on it, but it is where it's introduced in season 5, and it's brought back around because of this conversation in season 3. But for me, it's that Sookie felt like she had to do that because their relationship doesn't have the communication level or skill set where she could sit him down and go, I don't want to have any more kids, you know? And that's a bummer. It's a bummer that like you felt like you had to be like, hey, so you're going to go get a vasectomy. Surprise. You know?
Like a sign.
Exactly. Because I can't imagine what your body as a woman goes through when you give birth. Haven't been there yet. But I imagine that it's a lot. And so 2 kids, I applaud you. 1 kid, I applaud you. It's like, that's a lot to put your body through. And so you should absolutely have the choice, and you should be with a person who is on the same page as you about how many kids you want to have.
Yeah, 100%. I do find it funny, though, that this whole idea that they're not going to have any more kids leads to Martha having 1,000 middle names.
Yeah, hilarious.
That's
very funny.
Very Sookie and Jackson of them.
It is.
And I think, am I remembering it right that like they give her those middle names before he goes off to get his vasectomy?
Yeah.
So like, I like that they come to this like kind of conclusion of like, oh yeah, we'll just use them all here. Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, totally.
Now you're going to lie to me.
Right. Well, they don't know that yet, but yes, to be revealed. Before this all happens, there is an interesting happening between, and this is what I was talking about in the last episode about Luke and Jackson's relationship kind of being very touch and go, because I do feel like they have a very interesting dynamic in that like Jackson, I think, tries to stand up to Luke a lot because Sookie and Luke have always had a very interesting dynamic. And that is a relationship I do want to talk about. Lukey. I don't know why I like that more.
Lukey than Jukey.
I like that so much more.
I think Juke.
No.
No. I think that's the part of it I don't like, because Luke is already his name. Yeah. And we're just adding like Lukey, like it's cutie.
Yeah.
No, but when you keep saying stand up to Luke, every single time that you said this, I think of the scene where Jackson is sitting down
in the
and
diner,
literally stands up
and goes, ah!
Yeah. That every time he said stands up to Luke, that's what it's playing in my mind.
Yeah. That is just like who he is. And he comes in season 5 when Luke takes over in the kitchen because Sookie is put on bed rest. And he comes in, he barges in, and he's like, how could you, blah, blah, blah. And Luke is like, you need to back up. You need to back up right now. But it's interesting because in the past didn't they have a fire, a stove fire, and Luke and Jackson are looking at the damage together?
Yes.
When is that?
Is that not in 6?
Is it in season 6?
Sure
I can't remember where it is because they seem kind of like they're palling around a little bit. But maybe there's a little bit of friction there.
It might be in 5 because isn't this when Richard calls Lorelai about it? Because you're the favorite.
Because you're the favorite. Yeah.
Is that one?
Yeah, I think that's in season 5. So there's that. But I'm really, in their kind of rivalry and Jackson being mad at Luke. That really comes up in season 5 when Sookie has to be put on bed rest and Jackson's really mad at him for basically hanging up on her and saying that he's not going to strain the duck sauce twice.
Yeah.
My wife wants you to strain the duck sauce twice. You will strain that duck sauce twice, my friend.
Yeah. Because when he's driving the golf cart away, and he was like, well, we're mad at Luke and Lorelai's
by extension, we're mad at Lorelai.
Well, I'm not mad at Lorelai.
That I think is very cute. And I think it's very sweet and endearing that he comes in and is kind of like, I'm going to be protective of her and my child. And I'm going to stand up to this man who I'm clearly very scared of. But
yeah,
he does say something to the effect of like, you could totally just sit on me and knock me out. But
those aren't the exact words, but he does. That is the
sentiment. Yeah. So I like Jackson in that. Season 5, Jackson, I really enjoy him. And that's probably the last time that I feel very endeared to him and Sookie, like for the duration of the season. Do I have, again, some qualms with like the whole vasectomy thing? Sure. But
up until that point, I like Jackson's like between the protectiveness over Sookie and even when he runs for town selectman, I kind of like his like passion.
Yes, tenacity.
He's like he's like, well, you've run unopposed. Let's find someone new.
Yeah, I also meant to say that.
Not wanting to do it.
Well, yeah, he's kind of a whiny baby about the fact that he has responsibilities after he runs. But I do like that he stands up to Taylor. I think there's something really cool about that.
And then again, he stands up to Luke to support Sookie.
Yeah.
The first one is self-interest, really, because he's like, hey, I don't want to have to move my greenhouse 6 feet because I didn't put it on wheels, build it on wheels. But he is kind of thinking about the town too a little bit. But then once he has too many obligations, we're like, oh, Taylor was actually running a tight ship around here.
Totally.
And we kind of needed him.
Yeah,
but this isn't about Taylor. But I do think that Jackson has some, positive, passionate qualities. He
is a very passionate person. For sure. I think that can sometimes be misrepresented as lashing out or being a little childish. In this season, it can be. But I think in this season, I enjoy him. I enjoy
me too.
What he brings to the table. In season 6, I feel like we've now moved into Jackson and Sookie being established parents. They're parents now. That is their role. They're not just fair. Yeah, they're not just new parents. Like they have 2 kids. Like the inn is established, the Dragonfly, I mean, and like they are kind of in that mode. And so I do feel like the relationship shifts in how they fit into the narrative when it comes to Lorelai's life and Lorelai and Luke, because they're now a couple. They're going to sign the card. We love you.
Yeah.
And
Luke's always been signing the card from season 1. We love you.
It's true. But Sookie's character, we've talked about this. We talked about this a lot on Patreon. She gets lost in this season. And I mean that in that it's not that she's not there. She's there, but this is not.
Who is this?
Who is this?
Like, I genuinely think that early season 6 Sookie, like, I think probably up until maybe episode 7, 6 or 7, this is the worst version of Sookie in the whole series.
It's just really out of character.
Revival when she's not there.
yeah, that's fair. It's just she's just out of character.
She becomes this sort of I'm not sure what the right word is, but like kind of this like almost like nag for Lorelai. She keeps nagging her about things and like just constantly kind of reminding her the state of things and how she needs to fix things, or pressuring her to. And it's this like part of the story that we don't really need from Sookie, and not how Sookie has acted as a friend in the past. She's not very understanding. She doesn't accept the circumstances in the way that she has in the past. She is just like continuously bothering Lorelai and Luke about setting a wedding date. Like, why isn't this happening yet? Yeah. And it's about Rory. And she has no real understanding of her friend in the way that she has in every season past. And you're just like, literally, who is this person? This is Sookie's twin, evil twin. And she's trying to like take over Sookie's role.
Yeah.
Sookie's
yes, exactly. I think they wanted Sookie to be a mouthpiece for all of the doubt that existed around Luke and Lorelai's relationship. Whereas if Sookie didn't draw attention to the fact that they weren't immediately setting a wedding date, I don't know that the audience would have noticed. And so they were almost using her as the person to continuously remind us, oh, they haven't set a wedding date yet. What's going to happen? What's going to happen?
But the thing about that is like, she could have still remained the same character, like very understanding, very intuitive character, very honest character, or like honesty hour with Sookie usually provokes some sort of honesty from Lorelai and reminded us of that. But at some point she was like hitting us over the head with this idea.
And this is when
she even goes as far as to talk to Luke about it.
Right. And that feels out of character for her.
And she's
very nudgy. And this is when nudgy. I feel like
never heard that word before.
She's a nudge. And she's I feel like
nagging, nudging.
This is when Sookie and Jackson kind of start to become caricatures of themselves.
Oh, definitely in this particular episode in Always a Godmother, Never a God, because this is when she goes to Luke and is like, look, I found these little cake toppers. But she's with Jackson's family, so she had left Jackson's mom in the car.
Yeah.
She had to go get her.
She had to go get her. But it's just like, it's just too much. They're doing too much with her. And Jackson then really becomes Sookie's husband, and only Sookie's husband for the purpose of this season.
Yeah.
And that bleeds into season 7. I feel like, the Town Selectman storyline is no more. We don't see him outside of his relationship with Sookie very much.
Yeah, especially because like at the baby shower, we get this like whole backstory of his family. Yes. Never actually meet them, which is like such a bummer because like we hear so much about them.
With the exception of the return of Beau, who we've already met.
Oh, God.
And that is also where I'm like...
Nick Offerman, though.
Love Nick Offerman. But one of my gripes I have with Jackson specifically is why did they not set him straight on this whole like Lorelai as a nymphomaniac storyline?
That's your friend.
That's your friend. Again, it kind of like gives me season 1 double date vibes. But now we're 5 years removed from that, and you guys have literally been friends. Now you're married to her best friend. This is also one of your best friends. The way you stick up for her in season 7 with Chris being like, we love Lorelai, or
we love farming.
Where's that energy with your brother?
Yeah.
So that's just something that grinds my gears a little bit about Jackson in arguably the only storyline that really focuses on him, because it's about, baptizing Davy and Martha and
ultimately him.
Really, it's and ultimately Jackson.
So glad for him.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Really, kudos to him. But
and the Lord. That makes sense.
The Lord.
Yeah.
There you go. But we didn't really find ourselves endeared so much to Jackson and Sookie in season 6. And this is when they really just become
Lorelai's parent friends.
Lorelai's parent friends.
We get 2 like memorable scenes with them, and both of them are with Lorelai and Luke coming over to their house, and then they host them, Jackson and Sookie, at their house as well. And it kind of just seems like they are now a plot device to have big conversations between Luke and Lorelai, and just kind of like background, because this is when Davy won't turn the TV off, but developmentally he's not at the age that he would turn the TV off, but that's neither here nor there.
And I don't know if that was meant to be the comedy, but we hated that.
That was like, we hated that dinner. And Luke was just sitting there seemingly just like blocking all of it out, but Lorelai was really worried that he was not having a time or that this was bothering him. And then they come over for dinner at Lorelai's house, and I find this to be very funny because Lorelai and Luke are obviously having a fight about Chris, and Jackson thinks it's because of his
meat
burgers.
His
meat rub. Yeah.
That to me is, for everything I've said about the 2 of them in season 6, that is one of the funniest moments of season 6.
That's like one of their best moments
ever.
It's like, was it this? Yes, it was.
It was.
Like,
it's
that.
So good. It's so funny. So that to me is one of
that
the
dinner
things.
Feels like a return of them. Yeah.
Yes, completely. But what we're missing from season 6 with Sookie and Jackson are the endearing moments. And because they're only serving as comedic relief, that's what makes them feel like caricatures of themselves. Because when we do eventually get towards the end of the season, of course, we have the whole marijuana plot. And that is inherently funny, that Jackson's like, there's a bunch of weed.
I told them to weed the back lot.
And they followed the directions that I gave. And like, that inherently is funny.
Yeah.
But we didn't love the execution of that. We actually felt like that thread was pulled out a little too much. Like them running through the square and running into the rabbi and the reverend. So funny. Yeah. So funny. But there were other parts of it that just didn't feel.
It's the scene where they're in the kitchen and they say, we wait for dark. And Sookie sits down and she goes, we wait for dark. And it
feels very sitcom.
It was sitcom. We say this about Lane a lot, that her scenes feel very sitcom-y. And I think that sort of bleeds over to Sookie and Jackson just a touch as we get into, the storyline about the weed. But I think that one could have just been a deleted scene, like pull that one right out. And I think that the rest of it could have been pretty funny.
I agree.
But yeah, that it still makes me laugh, especially when they're like scurrying through town.
Oh my God, so funny. But that aside, in Partings, when we famously start out with, we end the episode prior, which is driving Miss Gilmore with the marijuana, with Lorelai being like, what's that smell? And her being like some sort of egregious amount of pounds of
60 pounds,
60 pounds of marijuana. And it's just, that's the end. Very funny. But when she wakes up in the morning and we famously see her laying the same way that we're basically going to see her at the end, and Jackson and Sookie are getting Davy ready for school, and it's like, be really quiet, Davy. And then they close the door and they're like, good job, son. That was great. Like, it is funny. But again, like, we're not really getting a ton of endearment towards them. And because they're only that.
It's about Lorelai.
It's about
like
Lorelai.
Kind of like
yeah.
Yeah.
But because I think that comedic relief is there, that's the reason why I feel like they are fun and funny, but I'm like missing that sweetness,
Yeah. And I think that that's the thing, is like all throughout that entire season, except for that like one little moment where, yes, that is it. Like when Sookie confirms for him that is the reason why Luke and Lorelai were fighting, was because of his meat rub. There's not like a lot of like funny moments in what they're doing that feels like classic them. Like we'd close to where we were at in season 2,
close,
in
but
season 1.
Little too sitcom-y.
A little bit left, but Yeah, I think that season 6 is one of my least favorite versions of them. And we get a lot less of them because I feel like they were like super central to season 1 and season 2 in terms of like the vibes. Like a vibe, like we talk about all the time on Patreon, like no plot, just vibes, or like lots of plot, limited vibes. And I think that something that always felt like tons of vibes is when we got a Sookie and Jackson like sighting or some sort of like involvement with them. But that starts to taper off as we get through season 6. Like it's almost non-existent.
Yeah. And I was glad you brought that up in the last episode because I felt that way too as I was going through everything and making our way towards season 7, where we really kind of lose a lot of the heart of a lot of characters just because of what happens.
Everyone's heartless.
with the writers. But I do feel like it kind of started in season 6, unfortunately, which is a shame because you would think that nuance of comedy and endearing energy would be balanced still in season 6, because I do think that they carried that through in seasons 4 and 5, despite the fact that they were becoming parents and there was a lot of comedy wrapped up in that. But by the time we get to season 6, it's just kind of not. It's not quite, I think, the right formula anymore.
Yeah, I don't even think it's necessarily that they became parents, because they still are themselves. They're still the same people that, for the most part, that were in season 1 that they wrote. And the foundation that we built in season 1 and who they are now and how they've changed feels authentic. That once we get to season 6, you're kind of like, who are these people? Like, they're just Lorelai's friends that have kids that like are kind of based on these other characters that we used to love, but don't really show up as often. So I think that is a thing. And it really is that season 6 Sookie is probably my least favorite version of her. Even as we get into season 7, I do think that there are some moments of Sookie that I prefer in season 7 versus 6.
Yeah, season 7 is also just a little bit, not a little bit, it's a lot of it not working for me.
It is
especially
not.
in all facets, but especially when it comes to Sookie. And I mean, Jackson's kind of there. There are some moments that I like. You know, there are some bantery moments between Sookie and Lorelai that do feel reminiscent of the early seasons. I do like the moment.
Sookie honesty hour returns.
A little bit, yeah. But
maybe a little bit too intensely sometimes. But like, I think that I prefer that over like the Sookie that we got in like episode 2 of season 6.
Well, season 7, episode 1, Sookie is pretty bad.
Yeah.
The spiders on the ceiling.
I don't know why I started with episode 2. Season 6, episode 1 is just as bad.
Yeah. But I do like the moment we talked about earlier where Jackson and Chris are sitting down and he like really tells him
the mandate.
The mandate that, you know, they really love farming. And farming, of course, is Lorelai.
Yeah, Lorelai.
It's a metaphor for Lorelai because you have to work at it and you can't abandon it. And, you know, I love what he does there. That is very special because we've missed that. It's a good reminder of the fact that Jackson is also Lorelai's friend. Though Sookie is one of her best friends, Jackson is also her friend.
Serious in this scene, like throughout. Like he can't take a joke.
Yeah.
Which, do you think that's true of Jackson? That like when someone tries to joke about his passion, farming?
No, I think that he's got a wall up with Chris.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Big time. Because then I think that they end up having a good time.
Yeah.
And he's able to joke around with him.
Yeah. But he can't pull him in yet.
No,
he has to commit to farming.
Correct.
Which is not to make it about Chris, but like Chris is like, I love farming too.
Yeah, and then the next episode is like
hilarious. No. And then it's gone. Completely gone.
Yeah.
Bye, Chris.
But I really do like I forget what episode it is, and you'll probably remember when the new produce guy comes to deliver the vegetables. I was going to bring that up.
I forget what episode it was.
I love, and I wish that they had pulled at that storyline thread a little bit more, because there's this guy who comes in and he has like some new vegetables. And he's like, hey, would really love to just like, you know, I'm just dropping them off at every restaurant.
He took over someone's nearby farm.
Yes. And he's like, I'd like to you know, just drop these off for people in the neighborhood. And he seems like such a nice guy.
Yeah, because he's selling himself as like the new produce guy. Just like, oh, I already have someone. And he said, well, these are great vegetables. Here, you keep them as a gift. And then he leaves. And they are incredible.
They're incredible.
And she feels like she's having an affair because she makes ratatouille, or as Jackson says, ratatouille.
Yes, he really emphasizes that ta-ta-ta.
He really gets that ta-ta-ta out. But she feels like she's having an affair by eating these vegetables and cooking with them because they're so fantastic. And when Jackson comes and he's like, oh, I want to have a bite of this. And she's like, no, yucky, icky, you can't have that. Bad vegetables.
Bad. And it's actually like everybody in the kitchen said it's some of her best she's ever made.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish that they had continued on with that a little bit. But she is like, this is where we do get some endearing moments between an endearing moment with them, because they go on a date and she's like, come on, let's go on a date. And it's very sweet.
Exactly.
I missed that between the two of them.
I felt like there was none of that type of moment in season 6.
Yeah.
Like that was a good one. And it was reminiscent of, the guy from the class that she met outside when she meets Billy Berg.
I was going to say, we didn't mention this in last week's episode, and I meant to, but I hadn't written it down. But I was thinking about the vegetable guy from season 7, and I was like, oh my God, I love that moment between the two of them when she flirts accidentally and she doesn't realize with Joe. And Joe from the Deer Hill Lodge.
Yes.
And he comes in and asks her on a date, and she's like, no, I'm married. When she and Lorelai are trying to come up with a plan for what she could say, she's like, I could tell him this, I could tell him that. She's like, or that you're married. Oh, I'm married. Yes, good. And I love that she puts on CCR for him, for Jackson, and bakes all his favorite things, cooks all his favorite things. And he goes, you cheated on me. No, I flirted accidentally. It's so funny. And so this may have been a little bit more of a recycled plotline if they had taken this any farther, of her using this guy's vegetables on a regular basis or anything like that. But I don't know. I just really loved
a layer to it.
Added some spice, some flavor, if you will, to
a flavorless
the dish, because a flavorless sheet cake
just
is what
vanilla.
we kind of have.
Vanilla,
which I love vanilla, but sometimes you need a little extra flavor in there.
Sprinkle every now and then.
Yeah. And so far, see, the thing is that we're still moving through season 7, so I don't really have a ton beyond this.
Well, we've reached up to Vasectomy Gate, which we talked extensively in Sookie, our last episode about them, and in To Whom It May Concern on Patreon, which was about this, where we kind of rewrite the entire how we wish it would have. It was basically that he had gotten it, but it didn't work. And you can hear more about it in that episode. But yeah, we don't like it. And that's where we're at with Sookie and Jackson.
To Whom It May Concern, it's us. We are concerned.
We were very concerned, as it turned out. At the same time, I had no concern. To Whom It May Concern, not me. Yeah. So it was a bit of a toss-up, but truly terrible episode. Our editor did say we did a good job keeping the enthusiasm up, though.
That's good. I'm always worried that because we speak so negatively about season 7 that people think we don't have a good time. We still find ways to have a good time.
We're having a great time.
Yeah, we still have a good time. Yeah. Don't be afraid. Join us.
Join us. Join us. We gotta learn those other words.
Yeah, we really do. I can't wait. Brett and I have taken a bit of a pause with Gilmore Girls. We've only seen the first. We only watched The Undergraduate. The next episode is Always a Godmother, Never a God.
What?
Yeah, we really haven't. We haven't.
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to hear what he says about the next couple.
I know. He's going to be.
Does he know really J-Word is coming back?
No.
Oh.
He has no idea.
Oh my goodness.
Well, at least I don't think he does. And he's not on social media anymore, so he doesn't get any spoilers, because he was always nervous that he was going to see some Gilmore Girls spoilers. But
fantastic.
Yeah,
okay.
I know. But
yeah,
I'm excited for us to get We've Got Magic to Do.
Yeah.
Because I think he's going to love the kids coming through the aisle, and he loves Patty.
Boy.
Yeah. But yeah, I think though it's not always fun to watch. We do have a really good time moving through season 7 and find endearing moments like this to kind of latch onto and be like, okay, this is something that we missed. And something that I missed from Sookie and Jackson's relationship was them not just being comedic relief, but also having endearing moments like the ratatouille moment.
Ratatouille,
But outside
yes.
of that, I haven't really seen anything more from them that has me like, oh, I really miss, Jackson and Sookie and like them implementing their relationship and weaving it into the series. They're kind of lost.
Yeah.
And they get really lost by the revival as well.
Yeah. The only thing that I know for sure is coming up in where we're at, because we have watched up to I'd Rather Be in Philadelphia in terms of season 7. But when Jackson comes to stay with Lorelai and breaks her dollhouse.
I forgot about the dollhouse.
Yeah.
You're so right.
So I think that's the only other main Sookie Jackson storyline that I can think of right now, because that is when the two of them kind of like reunite after Vasectomy Gate over Lorelai's broken dollhouse.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I can't remember another major moment between the two of them.
Yeah.
But we'll be on the lookout.
What I will say is that, we'll have our binoculars on. What I will say, speaking to the Knit People Knit, where that's the origin of them going on this mandate.
Yeah.
I do love that Jackson goes to really make a concerted effort to get to know Chris.
Yeah.
And to talk to him. And they end up...
Because Jackson... What does Jackson have? Clout.
Jackson has clout, apparently, according to the girlies. And I love that Sookie steps in, for Lorelai and says like, okay, fine. Yeah, I'll have Jackson, take him on a little... If the town sees that Jackson and Chris are out, then like Chris is in. And I think that's really sweet. And I love that they did that for her, but not without the caveat of, we love farming. Sookie and I both love farming.
Yeah.
So
we love you.
We love you.
I love you, and so do I. That's really what it is.
Wow. I've learned a lot.
I know. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, this was all really confusing. But the other part that I liked about that is the Sookie element of it, because Sookie was not a Chris fan by any means. Sookie had to be convinced, and Lorelai came to her and she says, as my friend, you have to help me get everyone aboard. And she was like, great, I'm gonna start using all these nautical terms. And to do so, she has Jackson, who has clout, and they're gonna pull Jackson's gonna pull Chris around in the wagon. Is that what it is?
Yeah. That part really made me laugh.
It's great. Fantastic.
And that's some of the banter that I was missing between Sookie and Lorelai, because the heart of Sookie's character comes from her relationship with Lorelai, as well as her relationship with Jackson. When that's not there, it's really hard to feel like they're a part of the story, and to feel like we still, I don't want to say root for them, but that we're still invested in them.
Yeah, invested. They're not just like floating side characters.
Exactly, because I feel like Amy did a really fine job at balancing the fact that, for the most part, Sookie was a bit of a more of a main character than Jackson was.
Yeah.
But she did a really fine job at balancing the fact that these were characters that existed in different like layers on the outskirts of the Gilmore Girls' lives.
Yeah.
But they still found a way to be implemented into the story and have their own story, and to have the layers of comedy, sweetness, softness, silliness. And that's what I really miss in season 6 and in season 7. And like I said, by the time we get to the revival, unfortunately, because of Melissa's schedule, we didn't really have any of Sookie and Jackson.
Yeah.
At all.
It was really just a little glimpse of Sookie. So there's no real...
Was Jackson in it?
Yeah.
He's in it, right?
Yeah.
By himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like he's the one that gives us the kind of the Sookie update.
The update on Sookie.
Yeah. But there's nothing really between the two of them, which also doesn't feel like them.
Yeah.
To like be separated in any sort of way. Not like separated, but like to not be in the same place.
It's also fascinating because I'm understandably so, because I don't know that Amy even knew about this storyline. We don't even find out what the third child of Jackson and Sookie, what their name is, boy or girl. We don't find any of that out.
And we'll never know.
And we never
I guess at this point they're like, what, 9?
Mm-hmm.
Where's this 9-year-old at?
I know. Well, this year they're going to turn 18.
Where's your 18-year-old? You don't even know?
I know.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, backtracking.
So before we get into like our final thoughts on this, I wanted to share some of the things that our audience shared with us when we put up a question box on Instagram. And I want to hear what you think about some of these opinions, because some of them are kind of harsh. A lot of the responses were about the vasectomy, about not liking...
You being me? Not
yes,
you being
you.
them. Okay.
You. Haley, you.
You. Not me and the listener who's listening in the room with us now.
Well, I always want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah. You and me.
Yeah, all of you. So a lot of the responses were about the vasectomy and not really in like their opinions about Jackson and Sookie being like on one end very positive because people love them, and on the other end the one thing that they were like, oh, I liked them up until the vasectomy storyline. We're removing this vasectomy storyline from the equation here, for me at least. I am, because we talked about it last year, we talked about it on Patreon, and admittedly don't really feel like season 7 is canon. So I want to remove that from the vernacular because
from the timeline we could entirely,
well, just in my analysis of them, obviously we talked about it. It's there, it exists, but I don't take that into consideration when I consider what Sookie and Jackson's relationship is, because I just feel like that's not it. And I chose questions that I felt existed outside of that rhetoric.
No, I agree. I'm on the same page. We can delete it. Select all, delete vasectomy.
I would love that. So someone said, I really liked them at first, but then felt like they really became caricatures post season 3. And I know we agree that they became caricatures at some point, but do you think post season 3, like starting with season 4 is when it started?
I think that the nature of them starts to shift, but I don't think it's quite caricature yet.
I would say it doesn't get there until like season 6.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think that season 1 through 5 is a natural progression of the circumstances of those people and how they relate to Lorelai.
Yeah, I agree. Someone said Jackson is a man-child and Sookie deserves more.
He is a man-child for sure. That's part of his charm, maybe.
That's part of his characteristics.
That's part of his communication style.
Yeah.
But does Sookie deserve better? Maybe. Okay, it's hard to pull the vasectomy aspect out of this because that's like literally all that's like flashing in my head. I was like, oh, she totally deserves better. But I don't know. I think that they're cute together. I think they're well matched. I think that he's protective of her, and maybe a character like Sookie, who I absolutely adore, could always deserve better. Pop Jackson in some therapy and get him some better communication style. But I think that given who she is and their nature in the story, maybe I love them together.
I love them together. I think they're great. I said this in last year's episode that there's a part of me that almost wishes that maybe we could have seen Sookie date a little bit before settling in with Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't know if I still feel that way after going through their relationship the way that we just did, because I do love, like I said, that every season is a representation of a different phase of their relationship and marriage. So I don't know if I necessarily feel that way, but I
could be convinced either way, admittedly. Like you can tell me, but I think I'm kind of in the middle on that. I'm like, definitely yes, man-child.
But Sookie deserves more. Yeah, I mean, I could make an argument for that, of course, always, because Sookie's my girl.
Yeah, honestly, for every character and every man.
Yeah, totally.
On the show.
Someone said, I love them, but sometimes they annoy me. Like, you're adults. Act like it. You think there's a childish nature about their relationship in general, less Jackson-centered? Do you think there's like a naivete there on both ends?
Admittedly, no. It's not like, I think that when I think of that, I think more of like if it's a spectrum of Kirk to Taylor. Like really, like if we're zeroing in on the childlike nature of someone and then someone who was never a child and kind of like running the gambit between those two, I don't think that they fit on either end of those spectrums. That like, I think that maybe their humor that exists in the show comes across that way. I also think I'm a bad person to ask because I don't have anyone in the show that quote unquote annoys me. Like I know a lot of people get annoyed by Taylor, get annoyed by Kurt, get annoyed by Jackson or Jackson and Sookie's relationship, but there's no one in the show that like annoys me when they come on the screen. Like
roll
even
a clip
Rune,
of Clara right now. Roll a clip of Clara Forrester.
That's literally where I was getting to. I was going to say even Rune, except for Clara Forrester. But even when Clara says, don't kiss, I am so on board with her.
Yeah.
So
sure.
There's like a 7. Like 7. There's sometimes when like Clara kind of serves people with the truth and I can get on board with that. Like with Jess, when he says, I'm no one. No, you're not. Like, that's so fair. That's so insightful, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe Claire and I, like, it depends. We can vibe or we cannot. But for the most part, there's no one who just like, except for Juliet and Colin sometimes. But those are more of like icky. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is just bad. But I don't think there's anyone who like, as a character, like, just like, I'm annoyed by them for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
No, I don't think that they're annoying. Maybe I was a little off put by some of the, like I said, like the nagginess of Sookie in season 6, but I would never say that I'm like, you annoy me. I still love her character.
That did annoy me, but it was more of like, who are you? This is not Sookie. Like when I look,
who are you? What have you done with Sookie?
And I don't look at this and like think, oh, childish, like authentic to the character. I think like you have diverted from who you have been for the past 5 seasons all of a sudden. Totally. And I find that annoying.
Yeah, I get that. But on the whole, no, I don't find them to be annoying. There are moments like the in season 6, the turn off the TV, son. Like, what did I tell you? That was very annoying. That annoyed me.
Yeah. I wasn't vibing with that. But that was like childish, and they were like trying to parent their child. It was childish in the sense that like you are not treating your child like a child. You're treating them like a small adult, but they're 2.
Totally.
So that's less childish and more of like kind of dumb.
A lot of people had thoughts and feelings about Jackson, like love Sookie, didn't love Jackson so much, and like their thoughts about him specifically. But as I mentioned, a lot of people were talking about the vasectomy, and if we take that out of the narrative,
if we snip it, so to speak, snip it out of the narrative,
correct. Do you think
he doesn't want his meat cut at all?
When you said that.
That was like on Patreon. That was like one of the see, this is how you know it's not a good episode, when there's one joke from it that like you are like that is the only joke that you laughed at in the whole episode.
The funniest thing. I don't think he wants his meat cut at all.
Well, because that was the thing is like Sookie is walking around. They're doing like a walk and talk around the gazebo, and Sookie is like talking about him like he's a child. Does he want me to cut his meat for him too? And Lorelai says, I don't think he wants his meat cut at all. And had never noticed it before.
Never.
Died.
Never noticed it. That was really good.
I will probably in our season 7 recap that we're going to do on pod talk about why I think I had never noticed it before, but we can get there when we get there.
Wait.
But that was an excellent joke. But yeah, let's cut that one right out of the narrative.
Yeah. And I want to take it out of the narrative because my question that came from everybody's responses was, did season 7 make Jackson unlikable, or was Jackson always unlikable for the fandom? Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can't get over the vasectomy thing. I'm like, okay, but take that out of it because...
But what if you got over it and the rest of it?
Well, like take that out of it in that Amy didn't write that. Would you like him? Did you like him? A lot of these
Amy's
other
Jackson, yeah,
right. Do you like Amy's version of who Jackson was and is? Because a lot of these other questions that are posed are, Jackson is a man child. I really liked them at first, but then they became caricatures of themselves. So is it this vasectomy storyline? And I would love for our listeners to let us know how they feel. Or was he just an unlikable character and the vasectomy thing sent people packing?
I don't think he's an unlikable character.
I don't think so either.
I think he shows up well for his status on the character call sheet, like for how far down he is in terms of like main character, like secondary, like principals, featured guests, whatever, like where he shows up as like, he in my mind is a townie, whereas Sookie is more of like a main character, core character, core girly. She's in the intro. So I think that for who he is to the show, I like him.
I do too. I think he's very passionate. And again, I know that some people can feel
pretty
like
loyal.
He's loyal. There is like that man-child nature to him, but I do think that's what makes him funny sometimes.
I can be an annoying friend too. Does that make me unlikable? Sometimes,
for some people maybe, but
yeah,
not for me.
Like if you want to text back, probably don't befriend me, but like
she knows her toxic traits.
Yeah.
Are they toxic? No. But yeah, for the most part, I just think that on the whole, if I can give my opinion on the two of them by the end of the series, thank you. I really love them. I take season 7 out of it because moreover, the vasectomy storyline, I
just that one, I think, because I do like them in 7. I will say. Yeah,
outside of that, I do, because I really don't think Amy would have incorporated that. I think she would have found a more clever way to figure out how to deal with the fact that Melissa got pregnant.
Yes. Yeah. That is like the main element of it, is they had to find a way, which is why we talked about on Patreon. If like it hadn't worked, there could have been so many jokes that would have come out of that.
Yes.
But I digress.
Yeah.
But I would say by the end of the series, you are a Sookie Jackson fan?
Absolutely. Always have been, always will be.
Because I said like loathe love was my I guess loathe like love was.
Here's what I'll say is that I love them at the beginning. I still like them at the end. I'm not
what's your favorite season of them? That was really what I wanted to know.
I think it's season. Oh gosh. I think it's season 1.
Yeah.
I think so too. Season 1. I love their courtship. And that's the thing is first 3 seasons, I love them. And I still really, I would even go as far to say I love them in seasons 4 and 5. But by season 6, I'm just like, I like you guys, but we're missing some ingredients here. And then by season 7, it's not that I dislike them. It's just that I'm like, I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't necessarily care about them in season 7. There's nothing giving me... With the exception of the Ratatouille. That's the thing.
The Ratatouille really returned us. I think the Ratatouille I like better than the first couple of episodes of the two of them in season 6, admittedly. I like the Ratatouille moment better than the entire episode of Always a Godmother, Never a God.
Yeah, I get that too. I get it. It was a great storyline. And that's not something I give to season 7 very often because it was a little messy. I think where I land by the end of the series is that I loved them at the beginning. And by the end, I like them. By a year in the life, I don't really know where they stand because there's such ambiguity, and it was really due to Melissa's schedule. So it's hard to really have an opinion about them in the revival. And maybe I'll feel differently after we watch the revival, but I still really enjoy them. Do you feel the same way?
I feel a lot of the same because I agree that season 1 is my favorite season with them. It's just the establishment of their relationship and the two of them. It just all feels so right. Mm-hmm. And I agree. It's really just 1 through 3 that feels so much like them. 4 and 5, of course. But by the end of it, I think I would give it a because I think that 6 and 7 kind of pull it down just a bit. Is that true? Do I feel just and not love? Because if by the end of the series, when we get to the revival, if Amy had decided that they were broken up and not this ambiguous separation that seems to be happening because of Melissa's schedule, I don't think I would be like super upset about it. I'd be like, oh, what happened between the two of them? Paris and Doyle, on the other hand, I was like, what happened to these soulmates?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that I was like, I would probably say the same. I'd probably be like, oh, I'd really love to know what happened there. Paris and Doyle, I definitely wanted to know what happened. I was like, wait, the two of you aren't still together? Are you joking?
Is that for real?
I think I would probably feel that way about Sookie and Jackson. I was surprised to, see that they're not as, or they don't seem to be as connected right now because
as dedicated.
Because Sookie is off. Wherever she is. I always forget in the revival. I think you mentioned that she's like cross-pollinating or like looking.
She's farming something.
Farming, yeah. So I'm intrigued to get back into that because I haven't watched the revival in many years.
Quite some time.
Yeah, but they're seemingly separate from each other, not separated necessarily, but yeah, I would be really intrigued to see kind of where they are right now, how their marriage is, if they're still the same. But on the whole, I really love them.
Yeah. Well, I think that if after season 3, if we found out that they were no longer together, devastated. Truly. But I do think that they peter off in the storyline enough by the end of it that I'm like, okay. But I'll upgrade it to a love. I do love them. I will say, I love them, but I think what takes it to a love for me is Sookie. I love Sookie. I like Jackson.
We love you.
We love you.
I love you. I like you.
I like you as well. Exactly. That's exactly where I feel.
I get it. I'm curious what our audience at home thinks. We were originally going to do a Gilmore to consider on this, but we just yapped too much about one of our favorite couples. And so I wanted to include some audience opinions, but would love to maybe do a Gilmore to consider including them over the summer.
Yeah, I do need us to do a poll though, finding out if other people think Jackson is annoying or if Sookie and Jackson are annoying. I do want to know that.
Yeah, I know.
Either call in or we'll do a poll. Need to know.
Well, we did a poll being like, do you love Sookie and Jackson as a couple? And the majority of people said yes. Yeah, there were a handful of people that were like, I like them. And then there was a spattering of people that were like, not really for me. Yeah.
And I wonder if you can find someone annoying and still like them. I hope so, because that's me. I hope you still like me. But
haven't we all felt that way? I hope you still like me. I know I'm annoying, but
yeah. So I would be interested to do an annoying poll. I kind of want to do like Sookie and Jackson together. Jackson and Sookie.
Yeah.
And see where that all crosses.
Yeah. Yeah. A little cross-pollination, if you will.
A little. Just a touch.
So
that'll be the name of this episode. Cross-pollination.
Wow. Love that for us. So those are our thoughts on Sookie and Jackson. Next week is June 3rd, which our Tuesday episode falls on June 3rd for the first time. So of course, we have to have a little June 3rd celebration.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe we'll cancel it?
Is that what we're doing?
No. But I'm just saying, that's what they do. Could you imagine if we just canceled June 3rd?
Like as a day altogether?
Well, I just more so meant that the episode doesn't go up because it was canceled. The wedding was canceled.
I guess we'll find out in the next episode.